just 1 minute to go. Good afternoon, wherever you are calling in from today. And hopefully it's not good evening where you are. If you're on the East Coast, it might be good evening. And if you're in Australia, it might be good morning, I would say. So thank you for coming to our session today. This is part 2 of how to be a future-ready leader. Last week, we started with part 1. Someone has a question. I see your hand up. Is that Gar? Do you have something to say? Or you're just saying hello? Okay, good. So welcome. And it's nice to meet everyone. I can barely see your face, so I can see your names. It's a privilege to be able to share with you today this series that we have at Springlight called How to Be a Future-Ready Leader. Last week, we started to look at some of the theory around leadership and the concept of self-leadership. So let's get into it today. I wanted to remind us what is included in this series. So week 1, we did power of leadership. We talked about what is power, what is leadership, right? And then we went into what self-leadership means and what the benefits of self-leadership are. Then we started to look at something called development levels, which is the foundation of really what we're doing, that leadership shows up differently at different levels of development. So we talked about that a little bit. Then I gave you a fun assignment. I know school is busy. If you haven't done it, don't feel bad, okay? So today we're going to do a recap of last week's session. And we're also going to look at what are the different styles that you could utilize to lead people. Now, this is very detailed and heavy content. So we may not get to this concept of smarter leadership that I developed. However, we'll do the best that we can. Here are 2 intentions that I hope that you make for yourself today. Number 1, whatever you're doing, pay attention to what we're talking about and use the chat to either send me a direct message or to send a message that everyone can see. Feel free to ask questions. If you don't want to unmute yourself and ask the question, send it to me via chat, all right? So this is the lay of the land for today. We're going to learn different styles of leadership, right? And go deeper into that. If we have more time, we'll get into what I call smarter leadership. So let's do a quick recap of what we did last week. Now, if you were not here last week, you are still able to follow our session today because I'm doing a quick recap. So we said there are basically 2 broad categories of leadership. One of them is leading yourself, and the other one is leading others. And we said, why might it be important for you to be able to lead yourself? I'm not going to go over this whole list of the benefits of self-leadership, but you can see it for yourself, right? The key thing is that you would have more fun at school, work, and home if you know how to lead yourself. And we looked at it a little bit last time. Related to that is this concept we talked about called assumed constraints. I don't know if you remember that, but if this is your first time in this session, this interesting picture is of an elephant that as a baby was tied to a small pole, right? As a baby, the elephant did not have the strength to break the pole, the chain. But over time, the elephant gave up trying. Why? Because, you know, we're all animals in the animal kingdom. We don't have limitless energy. So it stopped trying because it assumed that it didn't have the power to break the chains. However, like we said last week, a big elephant can easily break the chain, but the elephant might give up too soon, right? So the elephant had assumed constraints that we said, an example could be, oh, I can't speak in front of public audiences because I tried before and it didn't work. Or the last time I offered my opinion, my friend shut me down. You are assuming that the past is a prediction of what is going to happen in the future. So we want us to get out of assumed constraints, right? So I have an exercise for you. Get a pen and paper if possible. It's a fun exercise that I know that you're Springlight students and you're very smart. So let's see how you do. The problem is called, it's a brain teaser really. It's called Danke's candle problem. So who is Danke? Some famous person. He's probably dead a long time ago, but we don't care, do we? So Danke's candle problem. I want to set up the problem for you to see. You have a candle and you have a match box. As you can see, you have matchsticks within the box. And then you have these things we call thumbtacks, right? Thumbtacks are the things that you use to stick something onto a wall or onto some type of interface. So here's what the problem is. You want to solve the problem by lighting the candle, but you don't want the wax from the candle to drip on the table, right? And all you have is you have the candle itself, you have the box of matches, and then you have the box with the thumbtacks in it. So my question to you is take 30 seconds and figure out how would you attach the candle to the wall with the resources you've been given without the wax from the candle falling down on the table. So that's the question for you. You have, let's make it 45 seconds. And I'm going to ask somebody who is brave enough to speak up and tell me how they solved it. And this is not a test of your intelligence. So if you don't know how to solve it, it doesn't matter. 70% of people don't know how to solve this problem. Okay, so the 45 seconds is up. Does anybody want to guess what the solution to this candle problem is? You can type in the chat or you can speak up. If you raise your hand, I think I may see it. So who wants to try? So someone says in the chat, can you catch the wax with the box? Interesting concept. Let's see if there are other ideas. I'm not saying your idea is right or wrong. I'm just saying, let's see if other people have other solutions to the problem. How will you do that? Feel free to send me a direct message. The whole class doesn't have to see it. Solution, so you light the candle, you want the candle to be attached to the wall, but you don't want the wax to drip onto the table. How might you do this? Come on, let's get one more solution. Someone sent me a private chat, that's fine. I want to hear from at least one more person before we proceed. How did you solve it? So somebody asked me, should move the table? Well, I guess in the universe of solutions, that's possible. You could move the table, but that's not what we're looking for because the table looks like it's solid. It might be difficult to move it. Then someone said, attach the box to the wall with the thumbtack and then put the candle inside the box so the box can catch the wax. Okay, very interesting. Another person says, melt the side of the candle and stick it to the side of the wall with the box beneath it, possibly. And someone also asked the question, does the solution involve putting the candle in the box and attaching the box to the wall? So let's see the solution. Thank you for all your responses. So that's the solution to Danke's candle problem. Like you said, I mean, some of the other solutions could work as well, like move the table potentially. But the best solution that we know of is you put the candle in the box, right? And then you use a thumbtack to attach the box to the wall. That's how you solve the problem, and then the thing is lit. So a lot of you had very good ideas. This is a creative way of doing it. You know how last week we talked about thinking outside the lines because it was a line problem. This week we're talking about thinking outside the box. So the reason most people can't solve this problem is they see the thumbtacks and they see the matches. And they're like, but how can I attach the candle to the wall, right? So sometimes the solution is in front of you, but you don't know it. So here's another variation to Danke's candle problem. Sometimes the problem is presented to you in this form. They give you the candle and then the thumbtacks outside the box and then the box by itself. So it turns out that 90% of people can solve this second problem, but this problem, less than 30% of people can solve it, right? So when they take out the thumbtacks, people can solve it, but when it's in the box, they can't. Now, why are we talking about thumbtacks? Because that's not the point of leadership, right? So the point of leadership is that sometimes you face a challenge as a leader that the solution is not obvious. it might be right in front of you, but if you're thinking in the traditional way, you might not be able to solve it, right? So my encouragement to you when you come across a challenge, whether in school or in your leadership, is to say, is there a solution that I'm ignoring that might be right in front of me, right? The problem doesn't have to come in this form where everything is provided to you. It might come in the form that you're not familiar with. So we'll talk a little bit about confidence today. One of the key tenets of leadership is to be what? Confident. Even if you've never solved the problem, it's important to believe that you can solve it. All right, so how about we look at those of you who were not able to solve the problem or had some challenges solving the problem. What behavior did you notice about yourself? I don't know if you found yourself getting frustrated, if you found yourself getting sad, judging your intelligence, whatever it might be, right? You don't have to tell us, just think about it for yourself. And if you were able to solve it, what helped you get closer to solving this problem? So it's just food for thought, right? So to extrapolate this into real life, we want you to notice how you feel when you come across a challenge that you're not familiar with, right? Sometimes the problem is that you beat yourself up and therefore you reduce your creative ability to solve the challenge in front of you. So no matter what's in front of you, make sure you are your own best ally. Like, don't beat yourself up so that the problem becomes more difficult than it should be. That's the lesson to be learned from Dunker's candle problem. All right. So we started to talk about the development continuum, and the concept of the development continuum is very simple. Somebody came up with this model. That's not the only model that exists, but that when we are learning anything, whether it is leadership or math or Mandarin, we have 4 levels of what they call competence, right? Development levels, D1, D2, D3, what? D4. So this is a review still. We haven't started anything new today. And we said that when you start learning something, let's say you want to learn the piano or the violin, you're going to start with a lot of commitment. Like, you want to do it, but you don't know much. Competence is knowledge and skills, right? Then over time, you gain some competence, but your commitment will go down because you are failing quite a bit and you're not as interested. So this is still a review. We haven't started anything for this week yet. But if you stick to it, we said your commitment sometimes will be high, sometimes it will be what? Low. But then you are getting better. So your competence is now moderate to high. And if you stick to it, if you persevere, what's happening? You're going to notice that you have a lot more what? Competence and a lot more commitment. And that's how you should expect your journey to grow in leadership. When you start, you might not know a lot about leadership or the team that you're working with, right? But you may be passionate about it. So expect that it's going to get to a time where you feel discouraged and you want to quit. My encouragement to you is to stick to it, right? When you stick to it, you may eventually be able to overcome. So that is the development continuum. This is just a rehash of what we did last time. I gave you an assignment. I'm not going to ask you to submit the assignment this week, but the questions were very simple. And I want you to reflect on it today. Like, in the last week since we met, if you were to be honest with yourself, just be honest with yourself. Did you truly and genuinely do your best? Did you give your best, right? Do you know the areas in your life where you are doing well, right? Do you know yourself? This is the concept of self-leadership. Have you identified the areas that you think you can do better, right? And beyond yourself, do you know people that need your support? Because for you to make a big impact in the world, it's important to know what people need. And then we talked about what kind of vision can you have that inspires people? Because the key to leadership is for people to follow you, right? And if they're not inspired, how might they follow you? And also we talked about the same thing as point number 4. What do people need is more of a necessity, but also what do they want, right? They may want to play Pokemon Go, even though they don't need to play Pokemon Go, but it's important to know what people want. And then we said, finally, here's the catch on number 7. If you can match what you are good at doing, genuinely and truly with what people really need, then you can be a strong leader, right? Because you have something to offer that the people want, that you can support them with. So these were just reflection questions for you to think about from last week. Here was the second assignment. I said, based on the development levels that we began to talk about, I asked you to identify up to 10 activities or tasks for yourself, like things that you do. Maybe you play piano, maybe you play volleyball, maybe you play in the band. Of all the things that you do, can you map them to the development levels? Where are you just starting and where do you feel like you're really competent in what you're doing? We talked about that. Then the second thing about the assignment was for you to write down a list of 5 things that you face either in school or in your personal life. Like 5 assumptions that you made about things that you don't know how to deal with, right? So can someone send me in the chat some of the activities that they listed from the assignment, and also some of the assumed constraints that they found that they have themselves. Remember, assumed constraints are assumptions we make about things we can't do. An example is, I'm not good at math. That's an assumed constraint. There's no gene for math in anybody, right? So if you're not good at math, it's not because you are defective in any way or whatever the case may be. So send me in the chat. I'll give you 10 seconds to do that. Okay, so I'm getting some responses. Piano. So piano, what is the D level that you're in? Someone said competitive math, D3. That's good. That's a good place to be in competitive math. So the one who said piano, what D level do you think you are in? D4 in piano. That you are a prodigy. I love that. That's amazing. I don't know how to play the piano. I'm always amazed about how people are able to know what the thing sounds like. It's incredible. So good for you. You're like, no, not a prodigy, but have been playing for a while. What's the difference, right? You've practiced and you're really good. D4, way to go. Okay, so it's good that you've been able to look at some of the things that you do and you've done. And I want to encourage you in the things that you're passionate about to not stop at D1 or D2, but go all the way to what? D4. Here's a recap of what we're talking about. So someone also says, I'm probably a D3 in piano, my commitment changes. I hear you. Thank you for recognizing that. Yep. So this is just a recap of what the development levels look like. If you can take a picture of it, that's fine. I'm going to share the slides with you as well. So that would be good. All right. Now, I'm going to help you, for those of you who didn't do the homework, or those of you who are also struggling to map the things you do with your commitment level. Here, look at this. What do we mean by competence, right? Competence is a measure of my blank and blank. Who can guess what the answers are in the 3 blanks? Just send me a message either privately or to the whole group. What do you think competence is defined as? Remember, development level is made up of 2 things. Your competence in something and then your commitment, right? So you can be really good at something, which is competence, but if you're not committed to it, nothing is going to happen, right? Your development level is going to be lower than other people because you are not committed to it. So who wants to guess what the words are? Competence is a measure of my, someone says skill and experience related to the topic. That's possible. Someone says ability and mindset. That's also really possible. Very good. By the way, most of these words are synonyms. So let's get one more attempt. What else? It's a measure of my what and what. I like the first 2 answers, by the way. Skill and experience is good. Ability and mindset is good. We're just looking for really synonyms of some of these things. And you are not wrong, by the way. So the way we define it, we say the competence is a measure of my knowledge and skill. Someone asked me, well, what's the difference between knowledge and skills? So knowledge is knowing something usually conceptually, and skills is the ability to apply the things you know. So skills is a deeper level than knowledge is, right? So competence is a measure of my knowledge and skills related to what? The task at hand. So You could be really great at playing the piano, but you may not be a very good baseball pitcher, right? So yes, you're competent in piano, but you may not be competent in baseball. So competence by necessity is related to the thing that you're doing. The thing that you're doing is the task at hand. So here's a trick question. Where do knowledge and skills usually come from? Where do knowledge and skills usually come from? Who wants to guess? How do you acquire knowledge and skills? Experience, definitely. I would agree with that. Sometimes just being around the block for a while gives you knowledge, at least of what to do and what not to do. What else? Experience is a good answer. Practice, yes. Learning and practicing, you say naturally. That's all true. Beautiful, I love that. Yes, 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 I love it. So education, obviously, like you go to school to learn stuff. Training, like some of you have said, definitely training. Experience, as you can see, you all are really smart. You're just getting the answers like that. So there's this thing called transferable skills. So maybe you're really good at playing, I don't know much about musical instruments. So maybe you're really good at playing or running, athletics. And then you go to football and it requires a lot of speed. You can transfer your skills in one domain to another domain. That's what they mean by transferable skills. So again, we're talking about development level. So before you call yourself D1, D2, D3, D4, ask yourself, what is the level of knowledge and skills that I have in this thing that I'm doing, right? Good. Here's something that you may not have asked yourself before. What is your level of commitment, right? So let's say I'm a prodigy as a piano player. I'm a prodigy, I'm really good, but I haven't practiced Beethoven's, Concerto No. 5 for a long time. I'm not going to be as good as somebody who practices all the time because my commitment is low. So the lack of commitment can overcome your competence in something, right? So what is commitment of? Tell me 2 blank spaces. Commitment is a measure of my blank and blank. Who wants to try that? What is commitment? What is commitment? You got the previous questions right. So let's see if you got this too. So again, we're talking about development levels. We're saying it's made up of 2 different things. It's made up of competence, which is about knowledge and skills, and commitment. But I'm asking you, what do you think commitment is? It's a measure of my blank and what? Blank. Someone says perseverance and will, willingness and energy. Really good answers, I have to say. Really good answers. And my answers are not going to be too different. Yeah, I like what you said as well. Willingness and energy and time spent. Motivation, that's possible. Dedication and application. Woo! Okay, so y'all are too smart for me. First one, motivation. By the way, it's similar to willingness. It's similar to other words, right? These are just words. They have synonyms. Motivation and what? Confidence. So commitment is a measure of my what? Motivation and confidence. Because we said, even if you're a prodigy and you're not motivated, your skills eventually will go away. And usually people who are committed also have confidence, right? So what is motivation then? Motivation is my blank for a task. What is that? Can someone tell me what they think motivation is? Y'all are doing great. So let's go. I want it to be participatory today. Motivation is my, something like the amount I want to do it. Exactly, I love it. The word for it is what? Enthusiasm, right? Because enthusiasm is the willingness or the amount of effort that you put into something. So that is true. How about confidence? It's my feeling of being able to what? This is a little bit harder. Let's go. So confidence is really a feeling of your ability to do something well, right? That's confidence. Without supervision, haha, right? So you probably don't need a teacher to teach you how to play some of the things that you know already. I'm using a lot of music analogies, but I don't know anything about music. So that's probably not the best analogy to use. So any questions up to this point? we've just talked about development levels. The reason we went over development levels again today was I want you to go back to the homework that I gave you and look at the tasks that you do through a lens of competence and what? Commitment. Both of them have to be true for you to be a D4 at a high level, right? So if you're really good at something, but you don't like to do it, you cannot say you're a D4 in it, okay? You don't have the enthusiasm for it. Questions. Okay, let's go to the next. So this is the key of what we're learning today. Today, we are going to learn about leadership behaviors and what? Leadership styles. And it's important. Before you think that one style is better than the other or one behavior is better than the other, I want to ask you a simple question. Will you trust a 6-year-old with the keys to a car? Maybe not, right? Because they don't have the experience, the knowledge, the life, I don't know, confidence to be able to do it. So every style of leadership has a place for it. So don't judge one to be better than the other. Context is important. That's all I want to say. So let's start with leadership behaviors, okay? Maybe you've heard of this thing called micromanaging. Sometimes someone will say that, oh, my manager is such a micromanager. That falls in the line of what they call directive behavior. You tell people what to do. So you say, I am the boss, and this is how things are done. That's directive behavior. I am the boss, and I set the goals and targets for this organization. Okay? I tell you what to do. I define the roles. I define the timeline and method of evaluation. Now, when can this thing be a good thing? Let's say you just graduate from high school and then you're an intern at Google, where I work. You don't expect them to give you the code to Google search for you to work on, right? Because we don't want you to break the company. We're going to say, X, work on this small part. Someone is going to check on you at the end of the day, make sure nothing broke. That is directive leadership. And in many cases is what? Warranted, right? So when people are not very experienced in something and you are the leader and you give them a task to do, you have to spend more time directing them, telling them what to do, defining what the goals and timelines are, helping them to organize their work in what? Advance. So directive leadership is not bad. Yet, let's say you're working with somebody who has a PhD from Harvard in computer science, and they have 10 years of experience working from Microsoft and Facebook, and they come to you and you're the manager at Google, and you're trying to check every line of code that the person does, right? That's directive behavior. That's not right. This person knows what they're doing. Why are you giving them directive behavior? So in that context, this style of leadership would not be what? Effective. So let's see what style of leadership might be what? Effective. Supportive behavior. So behavior are actions that people take, right? So supportive, you encourage the person. So when I started at Google, I was very overwhelmed. I was like, how am I supposed to learn all these things in the first month of the job and start producing? It was overwhelming for me. Luckily for me, I have a manager who is very encouraging and reassuring, right? So sometimes you need somebody who encourages and reassures you. That falls under supportive behavior. And also, if you have people who are really good at their job, you want to explain to them the project. Why is this project important? Why is this task important? You spend time explaining because you know they can do it. You want to listen to their complaints or their questions and give input where you can, right? This point is really important. Encourage them to solve the problems themselves. So let's say, like the manager that I work for has 12 people reporting to her. If she wants to direct all of us, she won't have enough time to do her own work, right? So what she does is she encourages people to solve their own work problems. So I hope you see what I'm saying. Supportive behavior is what? Encourage self-reliant problem solve. But here's the catch. Supportive behavior works for people with experience, people who are in high development level. So if I'm supervising an employee who is D3 or D4 in the task, supportive behavior will be good. But if somebody just came from college or high school, At D1, I don't want to use too much supportive behavior. I'm going to go back to what? Directive behavior. And it's not because I'm not nice. It's just the most efficient way to lead the person in that context. Any questions on this up to this point? Between leadership behaviors, like directive versus what? Supportive. Because we are about to expand into that a little bit and dig a little bit deeper into the differences between the two. Okay, I'm assuming no questions. So let's look at something called leadership styles. Remember what I told you from the beginning. This topic is leadership behaviors and styles. So we've looked at behaviors, directive behavior, works sometimes, doesn't work. So if you're in high school, your parents probably lead you with a lot of directive behavior because you don't necessarily have the life experience in many things. So it's okay that your parents can be directive, right? But when you are in college or you're graduating from college, your parents will probably shift to a different mode of leadership. And think about when you were in elementary school. Your parents were more directive, but now that you're in high school, they are more what? Supportive. They ask you, what do you want to do? What do you want to eat? What do you want to study? Which AP exam do you want to take? They are being more what? Supportive. So that's why I don't want to make one leadership behavior better than the other, right? It all is context dependent. So leadership style. You know how we said development levels, D1, D2, D3, D4, really boring. See, I'm certified in this thing called Ken Blanchard Leadership Institute training. That's what I'm training you with. So this is from Ken Blanchard. He's a famous management specialist, right? So I took this course in San Diego a couple of years back. And I was like, why can't they come up with better names than D1, D2, D3, D4? And they can't. They just call it D1 to D4. And the leadership styles are also called, guess what? S1, S2, S3, and what? S4. And if you think that S1 and D1 are related, you are right. Because if somebody is a D1, the leadership style that works best for them is what? S1, okay? So let's say you have a team and you just hired a new person to your team. The leadership style that may work best is S1. You have to define for them what their role is. You have to tell them how to do the work. You have to help them with planning and prioritizing. You have to check on them regularly, right? You have to orient them with how their role fits into the entire company. And when they do work, you have to give them what? Feedback. So that is not micromanagement. That is wisdom because you are leading them based on where they are in their career. So that's the S1 leadership. We will see that it maps to what? D1. So let's go to S2. So S2 is the leadership style that matches well with D2, but here's what is happening here. Remember, in D2, people are beginning to get discouraged, right? Because they started with high commitment, but they've suffered some discouragements or failures. So as a leader, you can see that there's something about encouraging is really important in S2 because people are getting frustrated. Praising is really important, right? Giving them feedback is still important. Explaining things is important because we want the right leader for the right job. I've had managers, all they do is S1 leadership. All they do is S1 leadership. I also have had managers, all they do is what? S2 leadership. Remember, it is not good or bad. Is it the right style of leadership for the situation you find yourself in? That is what we need to focus on. So that's S2. S3 is where people are beginning to be a lot more competent. They are a lot more independent, right? So you're dealing with somebody who is D3 at the task that is at hand. So you see that you are not directing them as much. This is more like supportive behavior. So just so you know, S1 and S2 are more directive. If I could go back to that, where was I? So S2 is a little bit more directive. S1 is very directive, right? All right, so when we go to S3, now you're getting into more of the supportive leadership style. So you're asking and you are listening. You are facilitating their problem solving skills. So they come to you with a solution and you're like, okay, maybe you could do it this way. Maybe you could do it that way. You're reassuring them. You're like, oh yeah, you did great. You're giving them positive feedback. You're collaborating with them almost as equals. And you're also appreciating what they do. So all the descriptors for the S3 style of leadership are what? Supportive. I hope you get that. So I want you as a leader. So here's how we make you a future-ready leader. I want you to learn to be directive when you have to be. I want you to learn to be supportive when you have to be. If all you know how to do is one style of leadership, you're going to fail a lot. Why? Because you are not necessarily equipped to deal with different situations. So as a strong leader, you want to have the flexibility, someone might say the dexterity, to lead with all styles of leadership. I know that for some of you, one style might be easier than the other. Like for me, I like supportive more than directive, right? But sometimes you have to be directive. But we need to be able to flow between the different styles of leadership for us to truly be dynamic leaders. And if this is the one that I like the most. S4, like hire only superstars and you can sleep well, right? Hire people who are the best coders, people who are the best programmers, best whatever. And you're like, oh, I'm just going to allow them to do their work. I'm going to affirm them. I'm going to acknowledge them. I'm going to empower them. I'm going to give them challenging work to do. So here's a question for you to think about. If you hire somebody who's a superstar in their role, they're S4, right? Well, they're D4. They're really good at what they're doing. But you're trying to every day check on what they're doing, trying to tell them how to do their work. Don't you think they will be really frustrated with you? So here's an example that I want to show you. This is what happens when there's a mismatch between the leadership style and the development level. So you hire somebody straight from college or from high school as an intern, and their development level is D1, but you're leading them with style S4. So you're just affirming them, but you're not telling them what to do. They're going to be super frustrated. They're going to be lost. They're going to be mad even, right? They're going to be uncomfortable because your leadership style is not matching with the development level that they find themselves in. But let's flip it. Let's say you hire someone who is a D4 superstar, but you're leading them S1. Again, the same problem, frustrated, disillusioned, lost, micromanaged. That's what happens when development level doesn't match with what? Leadership style. On the other hand, right? This is the beauty of it. When the leadership styles match with the development levels. The managers who do this well, their employees will say, oh, I feel successful working for this manager. I feel important. I feel cared for. They are more positive. They are more inspired. So learn different leadership styles is what I'm saying. Take time to understand the knowledge level of the team. So let's say you're the head of a robotics club in your high school, for example. There are going to be people who come there who were doing robotics even in middle school, right? So you want to lead them differently from those who just, this is their first semester doing robotics. And nothing I'm telling you is rocket science. It all makes sense, right? So we are preparing you to be conscious about how to develop different styles to match different development levels. I have a really wonderful model I'm about to share with you. It's a lot of color. I love color. So this model is called the leadership needs model. You may want to take a picture of this. It's really powerful. It's really powerful. So in this model, we are mapping development level with leadership styles, right? We are mapping what? Development level with leadership. And if you're a math geek like I am, you know how we talked about supportive leadership and directive leadership. On the y-axis, we have supportive behavior. On the x-axis, we have what? Directive behavior. Springlight students, all of you are super smart. So you know how to read charts, right? But let me just, in case there's any confusion, explain a little bit. Supportive behavior, if you go high on the y-axis, is increasing, right? And then directive behavior, if you go right on the x-axis, is what? Increasing. So check this out. Directive behavior is high for D1, as you can see. So people in the development level D1, the best leadership style is what? Directive. As you can see, it's S1. So look at the color coding, red to red. Red is D1, red is what? S1, right? Then let's go up a little bit. When we go up to S2, you've increased your supportive behavior, right? But you're still high directive. So S2 actually, there's a concept called coaching. So coaching is like letting people recognize what they can do. Because somebody in D2, because they may be a little bit discouraged, they don't know what they don't know, even though they know more than they think they know. So you want to coach them. So instead of doing the thing for them, you want to help them do it. That's coaching. Help them recognize that they can do it. So in a sense, S2 is very difficult to lead at because you both have to be high in directive behavior and high in supportive behavior. So if you're a manager with a lot of people in your team in D2, you probably have a lot of late nights because you have a lot of help to provide the team. Okay, now let's go to where, as a manager, supporting behaviors are more interesting. S3, this place. You don't have to micromanage people at S3, right? Just support them. Maybe they need more something, give it to them. Maybe they need a budget. Maybe they need resource. That's what you do, you support them. But let them do their thing, right? That's that. And then now, these are the superstars. Low directive behavior, low supportive behavior in a sense, right? So it's called delegating. If somebody is the expert in their field, they know their field more than you, the leader, knows, right? Tell them what to do and let them go and do it. You delegate it to them. You only check in with them from what? Time to time. That's all delegating behavior is. Oh, I love S3 and S4, but as a leader, you're not going to always have that. So I'm going to pause here to do a temperature check. Any question on this needs model? We've overlaid everything we've learned in the development levels with everything we've learned in the leadership styles. And you see how it's a beautiful. So if you have this picture, print it and put it somewhere on your wall if you want to learn to lead. And ask yourself as a leader, or even as you learn the ropes of being a leader, where is my team? What skills do I need? If you don't know how to coach people, learn how to coach people, okay? If you don't know how to direct people, some of you are afraid to tell people what to do because you're too nice. What has nice got to do with it? You're trying to get the job done or you're not trying to get the job done. So stop being nice and tell people what to do if they're in D1. There's nothing to do with being nice, okay? And also, if your parents are telling you what to do and you're not comfortable, ask yourself, do I know what I'm doing? And likely you don't. It's okay for them to tell you what to do because maybe in that particular task, you have no clue what you're doing. So I want you to just understand, right? I'm not on the side of the parents or the students, but if you're also D4 and your parent is leading you with S1, you should be able to have a conversation with your parent and say, I know what I'm doing. Both ways. And parents as well. If you're listening as a parent, my encouragement to you is check the development level of your son or daughter and adjust your leadership level accordingly. So I have a question for you all. This is going to be a guessing game. Research was conducted among many, many thousands of leaders across the US. And then they said, we know there are 4 styles of leadership, right? How many or what percentage of managers are using a certain type of leadership style? What percentage are using 2? What percentage are using 3? What percentage are using 4? So before I reveal the answers to you, I want you to, in the chat, just guess. You can send me a direct message. What percentage of people do you think are using only one type of leadership style? So that means all they do is they direct. They are micromanagers, right? Or all they do is they delegate. The manager doesn't care if you can do the work or not. They're like, go ahead and do it. Okay, I'm getting 90%, 60%. Only one style. That means that's exclusively what they do. They don't use the other styles. So let's get some more guesses. What percentage of managers use only one style? 90, 60, 75, okay. I think you've had really bad managers, another 75. Okay, somebody has given me 80 for style 1, 14 for style 2, 15 and 1. Okay, Interesting. All right, so let's see the answer for the first one. So 54% of managers use only one style. So that's actually pretty bad. So half of all managers, more than half, all they do is use one style. So they're either always directing or always coaching or always supporting or always delegating. That's bad leadership, right? That's really bad leadership. That tells you the lack of leadership that we have in this country. So we want you, since you're still up and coming and young and enthusiastic, to learn to have more flexibility in your leadership styles. All right, so how about what percentage use 2 styles of leadership? You want to try that? Because more, okay, so I'm getting 25%. I don't know the answer yet. What else? 30%, 20%, 15%. You see that number 2 is much easier because, yeah, maybe around 20, because we already know half of them only use one style, which is terrible leadership, right? But before I condemn those who use only one style, maybe that's all that they're comfortable with. Or maybe their team is always in a specific development level. So if I have a team that is all superstars, why not? I'll delegate all the time and I'll go ahead and sleep or play golf, right? So 35% of managers use 2 styles. So what does this tell us? A full 89% of managers use either 1 or 2 styles. So getting a good manager is almost a matter of luck, isn't it? So that's a problem. That's a real problem. So I mean, the rest of it is easy to guess. 10% of managers use 3 styles. Those are, yeah, somebody got 10%. Woo! For 3 styles, yeah. So only 1% of managers use all 4 styles. So check this out. You may still be in high school or college, or you may be a parent. If you can take your time to learn to lead with all 4 styles, you'll be in the top 1% of managers or leaders in the United States. All 4 styles, okay? And if all you want to do is like, okay, maybe directing is too difficult for you, I want to learn 3 styles, definitely. But my charge to you, my encouragement to you, my challenge to you as up and coming leaders is to learn at least 3 styles of leadership, okay? You are always going to have one that's natural to you. Go beyond that, learn 2 more. And if you want to be the best of the best, maybe the CEO of Google or Apple someday, try and get to the 1%, all right? Very good. So I'm going to give you a quick summary of what we've been talking about today. We are wrapping up. We said, if you're working with somebody at development level D1, we know what D1 means now. They need high direction, low support. That's the S1 leadership style, right? So D2 maps to S2. You're going to get these slides so you can take your time to study them. We're running out of time today. I want to leave some time for questions. All right, so that's the summary, but I have an assignment for you. Okay? Let's go to the assignment and then you can ask me any questions that you have. So in this assignment, number 1, you are not able to do because we didn't have enough time to cover everything, okay? So what I really want you to do is number 3, look at 5 activities or tasks you have to perform this summer. We're talking about this summer. I would like you to identify 2 things, your level of competence and your level of commitment for those tasks, and assign a development level to yourself, okay? So 5 activities or tasks. And then for the leadership specific question, I want you to review 4 different styles of leadership as we've talked about. You see the notes. And I want you to compare them with the leadership style that you think comes most naturally to you. Some of you are very good at telling people what to do. That's more directive. Some of you are more collaborative. That's supportive. So identify what comes naturally to you so that you can know what else to learn. We didn't get to the smarter thing today because of time, but here's what I would say. For these 2 homework questions, number 3 and number 4, I would like you to share with your parents, right? Or Sherry from Springlight, or a friend, right? Or if you're comfortable with me, by June 6th, which is a Monday, of 2022, not 2020. Well, I put 2021, that's funny. Of 2022. I have put my email there, but I wanted to respect your time and also make room for you to ask any questions. I already told Sherry that if we couldn't get to the smarter leadership, we would do it at a different time. And Sherry can get to you on that if there's interest on that, okay? So I've been talking for about 50 minutes now. It is your turn to ask me anything. I learned that from Google, by the way. I used to always say questions, but then Google, they call them AMAs. Ask me anything. If I don't know the answer, I'll tell you I don't know it, or I'll go and research for you. So questions from anyone today, send me the question and we'll see. All right, I have a question here that says, how do we figure out what development level someone we're working with is in a task? All right, like ask them a bunch of questions, especially if there are many different tasks in the project. Does it need to be a complicated process? That's an amazing question. I love the question. You can know it for yourself, but you may not know it for the person that you're working with, right? So you answered the question partially by saying, ask them questions about the task you are giving them, okay? Observe, is the other word. Observe how well they do the work that you've agreed that they should do. Because if you don't observe, you don't know how good they are. And also just ask them, like, let's say you're about to give someone a project that involves a lot of Google Sheets or Excel. You don't know what the development level is. Why don't you ask them, on a scale of 1 to 5, how good do you think you are in Google Sheets or Excel? Ask the question directly. And usually people will tell you the truth. If they say they're a 1, maybe that's not your person. If they say they're a 5, maybe that's, in fact, what I'll say is, since you just learn development levels and it's a 4 scale, ask them from on a scale of 1 to 4, how good are you at X, right? And then if they say 1, you know they're D1. If they say 4, you know they're superstars. The other thing that I would say is that you can have somebody who's really good at something, they're D4, but on the same project, on a different component, they're D1. Here's an example. I want somebody to do a project for me that involves integrating some software modules. They need to know how to use Java and Go at the same time, right? So Go is a platform that we use at Google. So maybe they're D4 in Java, but D1 in Go. So you need to know what work tasks to give them based on their ability level, right? So maybe find somebody else to do the Go programming for you, and then have them do the Java programming. So yes, asking questions is the way to know. Looking at their resume is the way to know. Observing their work is the way to know. And notice that never call a human being a D1 or a D4. They're only D1 in a very specific, narrow thing. They may be D1 in Java programming, but they may be excellent at working in spreadsheets. So someone, can you go back to the graph so I can take, which graph are you asking about? Is it the graph with the, I'm curious, with a lot of colors? Okay, let's see. I think it's this one, right? Okay, yeah. By the way, so I believe Sherry will share these slides with you as well, so you'll be able to see it. This is the crux or the core of this model of leadership. The other models of leadership, I like this one because it lets you know that leadership actually is a journey. You start somewhere. You start with what nature has given you, what your inheritance has given you, what your society has given you. That's easy for you. And then look to learn other skills, right? For you to be a complete leader. So my hope for you, every one of you, is that you're a 1% leader. If you heard my voice today, if you came to the Springlight Leadership series this spring, that's my hope for you, that you're in the top 1% of leaders who is comfortable with using what? All 4 styles of leadership. So that's it really from me today. Oh, there's a question that I got. Okay. Sometimes I struggle with letting go of parts of a project because I'm a bit of a perfectionist. Aren't we all? Sometimes I want things to look perfect. When that's not often possible, yes, perfectionism looks good, but it's very painful and difficult to be. As a result, I end up doing a lot of the work because I feel like I can't trust others to do it. What is my advice? So I've been a perfectionist myself, but every day I'm becoming less and less of a perfectionist. There are 2 reasons why you don't want to be a perfectionist. One of them is people would always come and ask you how to do something if you're a perfectionist, because they know that no matter what they do, you will never appreciate it. So that's my first advice to you. My second advice to you is learn what good enough is for a project. So let's say I am the best Python programmer on the team, but I'm also the team lead and I give work away, right? And I give the Python part of the project to someone else to do it. I know I'm better than them in Python, but I cannot do everybody's work. I have many other things to do. So I need to ask myself, what does good enough in this project mean? Even though it's not up to my standard, if it's good enough, if it does what it's supposed to do, let it go, right? Don't hold people to your standard. So ask yourself, is this thing good enough for what we are doing? Yes, let it go. So don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, okay? I hope I've answered your question. Anyway, so we are on time. If you have any questions for me, reach out to Sherry from Springlight. And thank you so much for your time today. Really amazing answers. You guys